DBMS architecture. Before we start the topic, I want to request you please subscribe and press the bell button. And DBMS architecture. So what is DBMS architecture? DBMS architecture it's nothing but a representation of DBMS design. A representation of a DBMS design. So DBMS architecture is nothing but a representation of DBMS design, and this architecture helps to design, develop and implement and maintain the database management system. So this architecture is helps our user to design, develop, implement and maintain the DBMS and it also helps to understand the components of database. It also helps us to understand the components of a database. And next one is types of DBMS architecture or DBMS architecture types. Types of DBMS architecture. Types of DBMS architecture. So the types are one-tier architecture, and next one is two-tier architecture and three-tier architecture. So first one-tier architecture. One-tier architecture. One tier means it's nothing but one layer, and this one tier is the simplest architecture. One tier is nothing but a one layer, and this is the simplest architecture. And next, in this architecture, client, server and database all reside on the same machine. Client, server and database all reside on same machine. Client, server and database all reside on same machine. So next, the one-tier architecture. So the client, server, database all reside on the same machine. So the database is directly available to the user. If suppose the user wants to access any data, he can directly access the data. We can directly sit on the DBMS. Any changes done on the here will directly be done on the database itself. And one tier is used for development of local applications. One tier means one layer, and in this the client, server and database all reside on the same machine, and the database is directly available to the user. It means user directly sit on the DBMS and uses, and it means he can directly access the data. And for example, the client, server and database all reside on the same system. And next one is two-tier architecture. And the next one is two-tier architecture. In two-tier architecture means two layers. Two-tier means two layers. It is basically client server model. It is like basic client server model. And for example, so it has two layers, two types. One is the client layer and next one is the database server. So it is the client 1, client 2, client 3. So it is the client machine. And next one, database server. So two-tier means two layer. It is like the client server architecture model, and the first layer is the client layer and second tier or second layer is server layer or server tier or layer. So in this, the client machine has interface, and that interface helps us to access the data from the database server. So these client machines, the client systems has the interface, and by using that interface, the user or the client access the data from the database server. And the APIs like JDBC or ODBC. JDBC and ODBC are used to, the APIs like JDBC and ODBC is used to provide a link or connection between the client and the server. The APIs JDBC and ODBC used to provide a link between client machine and the database server. And if we enter any queries on the client system interface, the queries are sent to the database server, and the database server receives that query and process the query and send the data. Based on that query, it send the data to the client system. And so based on that, the functionalities of the server, database server are query processing and transaction management. These two are the functionalities of the or work or responsibilities of the database server. The client on the client system, the client can send the queries to the database server, and the database server receives that query and process that query, and based on that query it fetch the data and send that data to the client machines or client systems. And so based on that, the functionalities are query processing and transaction management. And next one is three-tier architecture. And next one is the three-tier architecture. Three-tier architecture. So three-tier means it's nothing but three layers. The three-tier architecture, three layers. So first layer is the client layer. And next one is the business layer. business tier, business layer or business tier. And next one is database tier. So it contains the data. Database tier or database layer. So 3-tier architecture, 3-tier means 3 layers. 3 layers. So first one is the client layer or client tier. And next one is business tier or business layer. And next one is the database tier. So in this, the client cannot directly communicate with the database server. So in the 2-tier architecture, the client systems are directly interacted with the database server, and access data from the database server by sending the queries from the client system. Whereas in the 3-tier, the client layer is not directly communicated with the database server, and the interface on the client machine provides interactivity with the database, and the business layer is used to support that interface. The client systems has interfaces, and the interfaces are used to communicate with the database server. And here in the 3-tier architecture, business layer is used to support with the interface which are run on the client layer. And that means business layer is the intermediate layer. It is the intermediate layer in between client and the database tier. And coming to the 3-tier, the queries. The query from the client layer is sent to the business layer, and the business layer process that queries. Okay, the business layer process the queries and send what data is accessed to the database layer, database tier. It send what data to be fetched from the database tier, and database tier receive that what data to be sent, and it fetches the data and send that data to business layer, and business layer send that data to client layer. So the business layer receives all the queries from different clients and process all the queries which are coming from the client layer, and after processing it send what data is fetched. So that information is sent to what data to be fetched, that information is sent to database tier, and based on that database tier retrieve the data and send that data to business layer, and business layer send that information to send that data to client layer, and this is the procedure. So in that, the business layer reduce the overload of the database tier or database layer in the client. So the database server is responsible for query processing and fetching the data, and whereas in the 3-tier, the business layer reduce the overload of the database tier by taking the responsibility of query processing. The business layer process all the queries and it reduces the overload of the database tier. And it is mainly used in the web-based applications. The 3-tier architecture is mainly used in the web-based applications.